There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I'm beating every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing everything on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up with a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. Scalar was released in 2004 by Global Star Software for 3 of the 6th-gen consoles, the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. It received average and below average scores across the board, with some publications barely playing through even one version of the game. 2004 was a huge year for systems like the PS2 though, with Scalar coming out only 6 days before GTA San Andreas, obviously completely overshadowed. Can I beat this unknown hidden gem? Scalar was a requested game, and before this I had never even seen the front cover of the game itself, and the second I did I thought, man, this looks like discount Spyro, but boy was I wrong. I found an actual legitimate unknown hidden gem I've never heard of, I've never seen really that many videos made about it, and it was extremely fun, and I think it's a really solid game for the price it is, which was like 20 bucks. Alright, let's get right into the journey, and the game begins with a very confusing cutscene. This is one of those games where it really helps to have the instruction manual beforehand to look inside and make sure you get some context to what's about to happen. And I didn't look in the instruction manual, mostly because nowadays people will most likely be emulating it, so they won't have the instruction manual, nor will they go online and look it up and try and read it themselves. But the scene that's set for us here is a young kid with long yellow spiky hair, and no, this is not a young Cloud, is being held against his will in what appears to be someone else's basement. This heavyset sergeant type person who is torturing him with a lizard dial. I don't know why there's a dial with a lizard on it, but that's what he's doing. Every so often, a disembodied voice will come over the top of this loudspeaker to tell him what to do next, and eventually this guy turns on the lizard dial to zap the kid, and it goes too far. So he's holding onto a file of all the stuff this kid is about, I guess. He drops it into a portal that's made by turning on the lizard dial. The kid then has his hands turn into lizard hands, and then the two-way mirror that the other people who are talking to the sergeant guy through suddenly vanishes for a moment, and the kid sees big lizards and then names them and says, "You guys are lizards? You're a part of this?" And then they say, "Okay, don't answer his questions, just keep torturing him." And so the guy keeps torturing us until he tortures us too much and we turn into a lizard, attack him, and go through the portal. I have no freaking clue what the hell is going on here. How does he know who those lizards are, but he doesn't know that they're lizards? How would he even recognize them? What, by their voices? Only one of them speaks, but he just suddenly knows who they all are. We don't know who they are. We have no context. Why is this kid turned into a lizard? He's very confused about it, but he's totally okay with being a lizard. Like, it's like second nature to him suddenly. He's very unfazed by everything going on, and then he just dives into the portal. They do mention something about our dimension and super soldiers, so we know that there's 2 dimensions, and these guys are over here, and they're lizards, and they're trying to make super soldiers of some type. But we never, ever again see this sergeant dude. I don't know who he is. I have no clue. In fact, I looked in the instruction manual, and for some reason, he's this kid's neighbor. I don't know who else he's supposed to be. Now, I'll get to who those other 4 lizards are in a minute, but for now, we get sucked into the portal and we end up in this other dimension. We get control of our character pretty much immediately afterwards, and we get to mess around and see what he can do. He can do a nice series of jumps, he can do some claw attacks, and he can do a tongue attack. The tongue attack only hurts smaller enemies and will stun larger enemies, and the claw attack is pretty much your main damage dealer for most of the game. As I go around the area, I break things and pick up 3 different kinds of pickups. One is this glowing blue thing that heals your health at the top left of the screen, those 3 little bars, which can be increased later. You pick up these small yellow dots, which are your currency and help you upgrade your character and give him some better abilities. And then these large orange lava looking balls that will give you some of the currency, but also just count towards level completion. There are about 10 in each level, and it's just another collectible. To leave this initial area, we have to ride on a vine that we grind like we're on a skateboard, and this is something we'll do often. However, if you can see from here, the speed of these grinds are very fast. They're kind of difficult, and I'm actually glad that they are. But this isn't the only thing this vine reveals to us, the difficulty. It is also the entire level, and if you look around during these early scenes of the game, there is a lot of detail and a lot of landscape to see. There's a lot of varied things like plants and mushrooms and rocks and cliff faces and environmental things that look really nice and is surprisingly cool looking and very detailed. After messing around a bit, I meet a new lizard named Leon, who is actually somewhat nice to us, and he has the file that Heavyset dude dropped into the portal, and so he kind of knows about us, obviously, from this file. And in the file, we finally learn that this kid is an extremely large advocate for anything lizard-related, for some reason, one reason or another, and it probably is because his alter ego, or whatever this is his lizard form, and he doesn't even know who he is. I guess he's probably from this dimension. I don't know, it's not very clear, but he goes around protesting anything that has to do with hurting lizards or putting them in danger, and so he meets these people, these 4 people who he thought were people, but were actually lizards, and they are here to make the super soldiers. These 4 lizards he named earlier in the first cutscene are actually like CEOs of big companies, and they're the ones who he's been protesting against all this time, and that's why he knew their names, which I don't know why they're on first name basis, and all of this seems very contrived, but we know that he is an advocate for lizards for some reason or another, and Leon says he likes that. That's about it. And then he says, oh yeah, hey, I've been missing my dad, and he's been gone for a long time. And then Leon's like, I used to have a son a long time ago, but he got lost. And then they just like move on, and it's like, okay, Leon is your dad. I mean, duh. Leon leaves us because he's busy, I guess, and so we move on with the level a little further until we find this cool looking flying creature who actually turns out to be Leon's friend, his flying creature, I guess. And so Leon talks to us yet again and says, what are you doing? I'm busy, why are you bothering me? He says he's looking for these lizard eggs and he's trying to return them to our world, because even though they are lizards like him, they are not actually from this dimension and he doesn't want them here. So he says, all right, do you want to go get this lizard egg for me? And we're like, yeah, sure. So the whole idea of the game is to collect these lizard eggs in each stage, which is pretty reminiscent of a lot of other games. They're the main collectible, and it's how you move on. Every time you need to go to the next level, you'll need more lizard eggs. However, there are only 2 or 3 lizard eggs per stage, and so most of the stage is you getting to them by doing various little tasks. And this task is very easy. It's pretty much just go across the level until you get there. And once you get to the lizard egg, there is a unique little interaction between Scalar and the egg for every single one. So I'll try my best to maybe show off a few of them. But here's the first one. The journey across the stage to get this egg is not a difficult one. But while doing so, I find that the game is really solid to just play. It's a solid platforming / action adventure experience. It's just well done, surprisingly, for a game that I've never heard of and never hear anyone talk about. It's a lot of fun to grab ledges, jump over stuff, hit stuff with your tongue, which you can do rapid fire, and you can hit enemies pretty quickly with your claws. It just is just a fun experience. And so I get to the egg and I get it, and I bring it back to Leon, who says, all right, I've got it from here, but Scalar does not want to leave things alone. He loves lizards and he wants to help them. So he says, Leon, please let me help you, and Leon says, all right, man, if you want to help me, we can. But the only way we can do this is if you collect the eggs and we find a portal that will lead back to your world so we can send them back. Scalar's like, all right, that's fine, that works. And then Leon introduces us to the upgrade system. You can use those little orange dots you've been collecting to spend them on upgrades that the big flying creature apparently takes into his mouth and then spews out all over you, which is, first of all, it's very unique. Second, why is he able to do that? Why don't we just have the flying thing get the eggs? He could fly over, get the egg, and we could move on. But you know what? Just for convenience sake, we are playing the game as Scalar, so that's how things are going to go. Anyway, this animation's cool and I like doing it, but some of the things you can upgrade are your hit points, your strength, how long some of your abilities last. You can even unlock a cool camera mode later on, where you can just, in the middle of gameplay, stop and take pictures of yourself in the environment, which is kind of cool, especially for a game this old. We finally reached the world map, and it's pretty cool. It's all this 2D plane while you fly over it on the creature, and you can see each of the levels and their requirements. You won't be able to see what's in a level until you actually have the requirements, but you'll see that you'll need a certain amount of eggs to go to each level, and you can't really skip around. It feels like you might be able to, but in all honesty, you need to pretty much collect all of the eggs leading up to the last boss. There are a few things you can still skip near the end of the game, but most likely you'll be doing all of the eggs. Now, when you click into a stage, you'll see that there are 4 to 5 to 6 different tasks that you can do. 2 or 3 of which are find the eggs, and the other ones are learning transformations and collecting those crystal gems, the 10 gems in each level, and those will count towards your 100% progress, as well as the special ending if you do everything. I do not do everything, so I don't get the special ending. If you'd like to, you can do all those, but I do the eggs because that's what I need to progress. Okay, now that we've reached our first full level we get full control over, I will be going over each of these levels in kind of an overview manner because there are a lot of things that you'll do similarly in each level, so let's just talk about the highlights of each one. And in this world, we get to do our first climbing. There are special areas you can just climb right up, and you'll have to avoid things on it. You can't jump, you can't attack with a basic attack, and you'll just need to avoid these big worms, which admittedly are pretty cool climbing over this path. You'll see this a lot in pretty much every level. I also heavily rely on the minimap, which shows stars for the locations of the eggs. It shows Leon's icon so you know how to get back to him to either upgrade or leave the level, and just orient yourself in general. It'll help you kind of know where you've been and where you haven't been, so you can progress through the level how you want. One of the tasks we also have is to learn a transformation, and there are several transformations, and you cannot transform at all times into any of your transformations, mostly just what the level will allow you to do. And in this one, it's kind of like this little Bakugan named guy, which is not actually Bakugan, but he does throw little bombs that he can roll out and they blow up. Kind of like a Bakugan, you know, rolling them and then they explode open to be creatures, but these are just bombs. And so that'll be our other mechanic. As you learn the transformation, you have to kill 10 enemies of that variety to get the transformation. Once you get it, you can then switch freely between Scalar and the new transformation, and you'll have a lot of puzzles to get to maybe like 1 or 2 of the eggs, or complete all of the tasks. So you'll have to get the transformation as early as possible so you can complete everything else in the level. During this first level, we also get to see our first arena, and these will be all over the game. In every single level, there will be several spots where there will be an arena that will appear on like a platform. It'll be pretty obvious you're about to be in an arena, and you cannot leave the arena until you kill all of the enemies, and if you die, you've got to do the whole arena over again. I'm not like terribly fond of the arenas, but they're there, and it still lets you kind of get used to how to fight enemies, especially because you'll be fighting all of these guys over and over and over in different areas, and to get past them, you're gonna have to learn how to fight them properly. After I finish the first stage, the next one has our first boss, and he's not too difficult. It allows us to transform into the little bomb rolling guy we got last round, and we can bowl some bombs at these little pillars that connect to this guy's shield, and every time you blow them all up, his shield goes away, and you can bowl some bombs at him. He only takes a couple minutes to defeat, he's not too difficult, and once we do defeat him, we learn that there is a multiverse in this story. So they are cloning all of these crazy looking lizards, which this guy didn't even really look like that much of a lizard, into elite soldiers they'll send out to destroy everything in the multiverse, or they'll eventually want to rule all of it, I don't know, but we've got to stop them before they do. The next area is very cool looking. When we first land, we get to see a lot of glowy elements from very far away, and it makes me want to go search them out and find out what this level holds. Although this level isn't necessarily very big, it has a couple things that are kind of cool. One of them is a lot of glowy grind rails, but the big one is the croc transformation that allows you to turn into this guy who rolls into a ball and has spikes, and you'll be rolling along something kind of like the grind rail, but it's just you for the rolling ball, and you roll down it and you can jump over gaps, and there's a lot of different aspects that need you to turn into the ball. There is one new enemy that you get to fight in the arenas, and this guy is someone you have to actually wait to attack until he slams his fist into the ground, and you have to get him to do it by getting close enough where he wants to use that move. Otherwise he'll use different moves and you won't really be able to hurt him, and he's someone that we'll see a lot more often at the end of these arenas. He's kind of like this mini boss. I collect both of the eggs and we move on to the next stage, where we get to use the bomb guy again, and this time we don't get to learn a new transformation. Instead, we must buy the camouflage ability from Leon, because there's a new enemy called the Trapper, and I really like this guy. He has this area where if you walk on it, he will immediately kill you. But if you camouflage past him, you can get past without being hit. Or you can jump on the platforms in the middle of these areas where it's safe. And you can kind of tell the ground has this texture to it, and if you're standing on the texture, well, you're screwed. And it's kind of specific. Like, you can't just fudge around a little bit and hope he doesn't get you. The second you touch that, you're gone. So you gotta be careful. Otherwise, this level has some more difficult grinding sections on vines. It's got some very cool looking green sections with glowy areas and lots of vines to ride and platforms to jump on. So I collect the 2 eggs and I make my way to the next stage. We are back to another boss battle where 3 of the 4 guys we named earlier are riding on this giant flying lizard looking thing, and we have to jump across these platforms and get to an arena where we fight one-on-one with all 3 of them. And they each have their own little mechanics. First guy slides, second guy does some ground pounds, and the third guy does some fire you have to jump over. All of these guys only have about 1 or 2 moves, so once you learn what you need to do, it's pretty quick work. At the end of the boss fights, Leon is kind of lost in thought. He's very slowly remembering things because, as he says, he was invited to a torture chamber many years ago and doesn't remember anything from before that. But in his memories that he has here, he kind of remembers a woman talking to him about naming their son Bobby, which apparently my character's name is Bobby, so he's our dad. I mean, we already figured this out at the very beginning of the game. The next level is completely different looking from the last 3 or 4 levels. This is a desert area, and actually most of it is spent rolling around in a ball as the Croc. You see, there are some time trials that we can do, with only 1 egg obtainable here. However, you have to complete all of the time trials and everything in the level to get 100%, so if you want to do it, you can, and I actually spent some time doing it. I'm not sure if I had to, but these time trials are pretty fun. You're stuck in that ball form, and you roll around using speed boosts and jumps to really get some air and some speed going, because you need to move quickly. Some of these time trials are pretty tight on time, within, 10 seconds you have from the beginning to the end to maybe mess up once or twice. There are speed boosts you'll get throughout the level, you'll have to avoid things, you'll have to use your spikes to break through things, and you'll just need to jump over most other things that can hurt you. And it's a lot of fun, honestly. These little rolling sections are really cool. At the beginning of this level, though, we do get to do our first flying turret section, where we're on the bird that we've been flying around on, and we can fire at things while we're flying around. Now, this part isn't very hard or very long, it's kind of just an introduction, because our next level after doing all of the rolling around time trials is a boss where we're on the back of the bird firing at him, turret style. Now this is a pretty easy boss fight. Every time he holds up his hand and it turns orange to fire at you, you fire at it and it will hurt him. That's practically it. It took about 2 minutes to do, and when we're finished, Leon finally remembers his wife's name and his son's name and realizes that Scalar is his son. However, Scalar says, "I don't know you and you don't know me." And Leon's like, "Yeah, sorry, you're right. I know this is difficult." But my thing is that he just revealed to us he was tortured and forcefully removed his memories. How come Scalar's kind of like giving him crap? He was tortured, man. If someone's tortured, he can't remember. It's not like it's his fault. He forcefully removed his memories. So Scalar gives him some crap and they move on. Our next level is kind of an in-betweener with no transformations or anything super special going on here. In fact, nothing new is really given to us. Instead, we're giving a bunch of trapper areas to sneak through, a bunch of vines to race on, and areas to climb through with very difficult enemies placed about. And it's a good challenge level, honestly. You just gotta figure out where to go and how to take care of the enemies in each of the arenas, get through the trapper sections. So it's more of a test of like, okay, you've learned a couple of things, let's just see what you can do with no transformations. And it's a fun level. You get 2 eggs and we move on to the next one, which this one also has 2 eggs, but it has the Doozum transformation, which is a flying creature. So at the beginning of the level, we start by moving across many different platforms and doing a lot of arena fights until we finally fight the Doozum, and we get to transform into him. And the rest of the level turns into us flying around this very massive, very beautifully detailed area and doing some flying challenges, kind of like the rolling ones we did earlier. We'll go through some rings and we'll fly through these caverns, and they're all really pretty, really well done, and actually kind of fun. They aren't necessarily difficult. I think the controls could probably have been a little bit tighter for flying, but it wasn't bad. It was easy enough. I beat the first time without too much of a hassle. The next level introduces us to the Fruzard transformation, and this level has a lot of open space with platforms to jump over this green goo that if you fall in, of course, you die right away. Once I get through some arenas and some enemies, and pass by these new little plants that if you walk by, they grow big and knock you off ledges, but if you camouflage and go past them slowly, they do not grow and will not knock you around. So the best thing to do for this, of course, is to start buying upgrades to how long your camouflage lasts. But you get the Fruzard transformation, and this guy has very low mobility and very low damage, except for his sniper mode. He can shoot from far away, enemies, and targets, and it's a lot of fun, and you'll be going through the rest of the level doing this, hitting things from far away to activate things, and killing enemies before you even get to them. After I finish up here, we get to fight a really cool boss. It's a lizard whose huge head is in the middle of this arena, and you must grind across different rails, get to different platforms, and fight him by shooting him in the eyes with the little Fruzard transformation, which is really fun, honestly. The animations of the face are great, the boss battle's pretty good. The only problem with it is that I got this like weird glitch at the end where I would try and snipe him in the eyes with the Fruzard transformation, and every time I did, my focus in the game would completely go out. It looked like I had no glasses on, like everything was blurry, so it was kind of hard to see what I was doing sometimes. I don't know if what that was or what happened, but otherwise the boss fight was great. Afterwards, Leon tells us about the multiverse and portal travel in a very, very brief segment where he says, we're on one plane of the multiverse, and every time we take a portal, it's not predictable what's going to happen. Sometimes it cascades and creates all these other things, and we get to see this cool little, like, messed up scalar with extra arms and legs because the portal travel was bad. And so they're wondering what's going to happen when they try and travel in the portal with all the eggs back to Bobby's world. They don't know, so they just go on. After the boss fight, we head to the next level, which is a very large, long level with one egg and one transformation, the swoom transformation, which is a swimming one, where we end up going in the water to swim, because usually when you fall in the water, you die as scalars. So transforming into this guy allows you to swim around and do things underwater, which is fairly similar to flying in the air, although the mechanics are slightly different. It is a little harder to swim under the water, but there are very few sections where you actually swim, so whatever. Mostly this level is made up of much harder arenas, and that's what we're going to see a lot of now. The arenas pretty much have all the strongest monsters, and they throw them at you constantly to beat the arenas. And these arena areas are large, so you've got to learn ways to fight each of the monsters. Some of them are just wait for them to attack and then go in and attack them, stun them with your tongue. Sometimes you fight multiple difficult enemies at once, and you've got to find ways to make them hit each other, which is possible. There is like infighting. It's not the same as Doom where the enemies will turn and fight each other, but you can make them hit each other by standing in front of one and having the other one attack. So that's practically the way to do some of these. Otherwise, they're just long and difficult. After this level, we finally head to the last level of the game before the final boss. We'll find the last 2 eggs we need to complete the game, and we'll use everything we've learned up to this point to fight everything all over the place. There are tons and tons of arenas, long platforming sections, vines, everything you can think of here. But there isn't very much in the way of transformations. So it's mostly just what did you learn in the other arenas, and we're pretty much at the end of the game, so we're just going to give you more arenas to fight in. This is probably the laziest feeling part of the game. It's just arena after arena after arena, and one of the things that we have to do in the level is also shoot all the airborne enemies, which they aren't very hard to do. You do transform into the guy who can snipe stuff, which is fine, but most of the time I'm going to be scalar because I need to be able to fight enemies properly, and the sniper transformation is slow, so most of the time I'll be using him to take care of everything. And this, like I said, this level's very, very long. It took about 30 or 40 minutes to get through to get the eggs and complete it. It's just a long, grueling level of arenas, and I think that's why it feels lazy. It's just all the other levels are pretty varied and have maybe 2 or 3 arenas at most. The transformations are great, the vines are great. This one's just too many arenas. Alright, it is final boss time. We have all the eggs, we have finally reached the final dude, and we are going to be using the electric bomb, something I talked about once earlier, but didn't really mention again. The electric bomb is practically just a kill everything on screen ability that you get by walking onto special circles or grinding on vines. You'll eventually get enough power to use them. I use them sparingly because you only get a few each level, or at least the ability to get a few each level, and while they are helpful, most of my time is spent normally fighting enemies. It's definitely not a win-all button. It does help in certain situations, but I barely ever used it. I just didn't really remember it often. I wanted to fight the enemies hand-to-hand more often than not. So this fight, though, you necessary to use. You have to use the bombs, because it's the only way to deal damage to this guy. So there are 4 circles on the ground, and they will all charge up your electric bombs. By this point, you can have upgraded your electric bombs to have a few extra so that you can charge them all up and use them one after another to deal damage to him in a row. He will try and stop you by putting shields and placing places to get hurt around 3 of the circles, and 1 of them is safe to stand on. Even then, when you're standing on it, you gotta watch, because he will attack you after a second of you standing on it. So yes, you need to charge it up in between all of his attacks, and eventually you'll be able to drop the electric bombs. And then he'll come down off of his little platform and fight you, and then you have to get back to going to the circles and get more electric bombs. At one point through the battle, he summons another large lizard to come fight you. Now, I was lucky and decided to charge up all of my electric bombs before the fight happened. I didn't know it was gonna happen, and when it did, I used all of them to destroy him really quickly. I had no trouble with him. I don't actually know what you're supposed to do to fight him other than just do that. So I was very lucky that I had charged them all up. So if you get to this part and you happen to notice he's about half health, charge all your bombs up and hope for the best. Anyway, once I kill this guy, I then again do some more electric bombs to the boss, and he comes down and fights you hard. Eventually, I'm able to get him down and kill him. Once he's dead, he has the portal little device on his chair. We grab the portal device, and Leon and I take all the eggs and try and bring him back through the portal. The sad thing is once I go through the portal, I turn back into my human form, but Leon does not make it, and the game ends with my dad not making it through the portals and us standing there sad he didn't make it. Here's the thing though, this is the bad ending. If you do every objective on each level, you will get the good ending. I don't know what that is, but you can do that yourself if you'd like. One day I will do that myself because I like Scalar. It's a lot of fun. But the boss is over, the fight is over, the game is over, we saw credits, it's time to call this game done. Game 77 is complete, and like I said, this game is a hidden gem. The game overall was a lot of fun. It had some elements that are borrowed from other games, sure, but a lot of games do that. It felt very good that you could go get the transformations and use them, and they made a difference in the levels. I liked the vine riding, and the trapper was cool. It was a cool mechanic to get through levels. You fought in the arenas, and at first the arenas were fine, but once they started giving you arena after arena after arena at the end of the game, it started to get a little boring and too samey. And the enemies are really cool. The enemy designs are great. The animations that they make with their faces and stuff, they're all really good. The bosses and stuff. But I believe the arenas were just a little too much. But the variety this game gives you, and the mechanics, and how the game controls, and how detailed the environments look, this game is absolutely a lot of fun. And it was short, it was 6 hours for me. And while I didn't complete everything and get the good ending, it probably would take another 2 hours or so to do all the extra objectives I missed, because I did do some of them in the early game, and a lot of the ones for the Chime Trials I did already, so it wasn't that much longer that you would have to play the game to get the good ending. And it's totally worth it, because a lot of it's fun. Just a fun game. So I absolutely recommend this game. It's cheap physical. It's just a great good time. So thank you everyone for staying this long to watch this video. I appreciate it. Thank you everyone in the stream. Thank you for the person who recommended this game, and thank you to all the memberships. YouTube, Patreon, Twitch, everyone. You guys made it possible to get this game. And now we're moving on to game 78. I'll be back soon with another video. Later.